This written essay has been recorded for your convenience.
Welcome to the Projection Room Brief. I'm Maryann Manelski. I knew the United States was in structural trouble in the summer of 1996, sitting in a movie theater watching Independence Day. Director Roland Emmerich, the self-styled master of disaster, had produced the first photorealistic images of the White House, the Empire State Building, and the U.S. Capitol exploding in flames. Explosions had been cool in 1980 cinema, but CGI combined with model making was showing off a new kind of power. It was the cinematic equivalent of young boys gaining access to industrial firecrackers and gleefully asking, "What can we blow up next?" Technically, it was a marvel. But outside of the technical display, something far more profound was happening in the dark. Those images revealed a culture contemplating its own destruction, or at the very least, learning how to imagine it. And up until those frames hit the screen, no one imagined the United States as anything but a triumphant, invulnerable superpower. We had outlasted the Soviet Union, we were exporting Pax Americana and a model of pluralism to much of a world that hungered for it. And after aerospace, entertainment was our greatest trade surplus export. In 1996, the world didn't just want our planes, it wanted our dreams. Then, in a single summer, 69 million North American theater goers and hundreds of millions more on VHS, DVD, and cable were mainlined an image of total collapse. The image of destruction could become part of anyone's dreams or nightmares. The image could be something that anyone who had seen the film could now easily picture in their mind going forward. The image slipped past our critical defenses, as many images do, settling into that place in the human psyche that accepts raw visual input and asks some quieter part of ourselves to sort out what is real reality and what is imagined reality. The inner darkness had been projected outward to an alien race, but the visual architecture of vulnerability and loss was now loose in our shared consciousness. Images precede reality, and what we project onto the screen eventually becomes the blueprint of the world we inhabit. The collective unconscious is not a mystical trope. It is the fundamental operating system of the human story. Whether it is some portion of our hive minds or something even deeper in the physics of the universe, who is to say? But our species can't even precisely define what waking consciousness is or if it lasts after our bodies die. However, a little bit more than a century ago, artists got a good look at the collective unconscious in action. Just prior to World War I, artists and thinkers caught a simultaneous signal from that deeper frequency. Around 1906, Freud and Jung began their correspondence, leading Jung to map archetypes and the collective unconscious by 1919. In 1915, Einstein published General Relativity, proving that mass and energy are interchangeable, and between 1907 and 1908, Picasso and Braque birthed Cubism, breaking standard perception to paint gorgeous abstractions that depicted previously unseen dimensions. None of them were working together. They were working simultaneously and tapping into the same collective baseline. And this is precisely why I went to film school at NYU. I probably should have become a lawyer, but the allure of myth-making, the power of the image, and the language of human consciousness lived in the cinema. And this is what I wanted to be near. The A that I got in John Kanemaker's animation class for a paper analyzing the Jungian archetypes in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs meant more to me than any credential because it confirmed that story is not mere entertainment, it is human geometry. I've got film school classmates who have made good and broken bad. John Fugelsang, Mo Willems, Brett Ratner, just to name a few. Overall, my classmates ranged from raw visual geniuses to creators who built massive careers, and others whom you've never heard of who have done great work in the film and television industry, and others still who walked away because the industry can so easily turn into a hamster wheel of noise. But looking at the landscape today, we have to ask the uncomfortable question: what are we doing with our stories? Are we actually creating an off-screen world that we would want to live in? Everyone in show business knows it's hard to learn your craft and get some mastery of it and get others to acknowledge your mastery and get paid for it. And then there are so many shiny objects, awards, good parking spaces, press mentions, valuable invites, and reservations to be had. When you are striving and being seduced and overwhelmed all at the same time, who has time for meaning? Yet meaning is all we care about eventually. Maybe at the end of life when there's barely any time left to make any meaning. But if you're lucky, though, you get a good glimpse of where the emptiness in your world lies when you wake up in the morning, not yet oriented to the daylight world, and you learn early you need to figure it out. Well before Silicon Valley decided that attention, raw, purposeless attention, was the only currency that mattered, the media conglomerates of the 1980s and 90s primed the pump. Driven by quarterly shareholder returns, Hollywood leaned without judgment into whatever held an audience's interest. It worked hard to learn how to push those buttons to make the candy come out and have a good quarterly return. And we never forgot the primary story credo: conflict drives the narrative. News outlets followed suit. Shows like Meet the Press stopped analyzing the quiet, sober work of governing and began covering politics like ESPN or an action film, focusing entirely on power jockeying, horse races, and division, because it makes for better spectacle. Today, we have streaming platforms sending memos to showrunners, instructing them to repeat plot points mid-script, assuming the audience is too distracted scrolling on their phones to follow subtle character development. The instruction is literally to hold the rattle attention of viewers by rattling it more with repetition. Lastly, consider what I call the De Niro Conundrum. Robert De Niro has been vocally horrified by political figures who govern with the lawless theatrical cruelty of mob bosses. Yet, De Niro's brilliant, captivating body of work spent decades crafting a deep, seductive cultural affinity for the mob boss archetype. This isn't to single out a single icon, nor suggest an actor single-handedly reshaped politics. It is simply to state the truth that every writer, director, and producer must face. Artists are always there first. What we pull from our dreams and project onto the screen spreads. It can spread like a plague, or it can be contagious like joy and laughter. Mostly it's manure. In that, I mean it fertilizes something. So characters matter. Archetypes matter. The structural integrity of the stories we tell feeds the psychological health of the culture consuming them. We do not need more cynical anti-heroes, nor do we need mindless distraction disguised as content. We need to return to creating stories as architecture for living. The stories we tell are instructive whether we like it or not. The Projection Room Brief is an executive and creative masterclass dedicated to deconstructing the mechanics of cinema and television through a psychological and cultural lens. Every 2 weeks, we will dismantle the narrative machinery at work in our world behind our most compelling media, examining how well showrunners, screenwriters, directors, and others manipulate archetype and myth and pathos to shape human behavior. What you will find here: deep architectural audits, analyzing how a series or film succeeds or fails in constructing character shadows, moral frameworks, and emotional resonance. Structural blueprints and actionable breakdowns of character shadows, mythic beats, and psychological arcs you can apply directly to your own character development process. And, most importantly, cultural diagnostics, exploring how current trends in cinema and television reflect and actively shape the culture of our world. This publication is built for storytellers and showrunners and filmmakers, newsmakers, and media executives who know that we can tell better stories and that by doing so we create a better world. Welcome to the room. Let's look at the blueprint.